Hola amigos, bien o no, saludos desde Medellín. Hoy voy a hablar poco con el tema de fluidez, cómo mejorar nuestra fluidez en nuestra nueva lengua. Y también con el tema de acento. Y para decir o explicar mi punto de vista es que acento sí es realmente el parte más importante o puede ser otra cosa que es mejorar para enfocar nuestra energía para mejorar primero y solo pensar con el acento casi con una cosa en la última parte de nuestra VI hasta fluidez. So ese es el tema de hoy. So hello and welcome again to Medellin. So today I'm going to talk about what I think is perhaps a more important thing to focus on as we're trying to get closer to fluency in our new language. And it's not actually accent. Because if we think about it, and we use the example of English, but you can look at this across multiple languages, certainly. Even within fairly small countries, there's lots of regional difference between accents of native speakers of whatever language. But something they all have in common is the rhythm and the natural tonality of that language and the way they express their sentences is the thing that marks it out. So you can listen to someone speaking in, let's say, Japanese or Italian or Arabic, and even if you don't speak any words of those particular languages, you can tell that these three different people are speaking different languages because it's obvious for the tonality. So even if they're talking about exactly the same thing, but in a different language, you can tell by the tonality of the language that it's different from the other one. So my challenge in this case is you might be conscious that when I'm doing my readings, when I'm reading aloud and I'm trying to copy the sounds I'm hearing, I still sound like I have a very strong accent from where I'm from originally, and that's not what I want. Well, okay, ultimately, perhaps it's nice to try and smooth out some of the sounds that perhaps you find a little more challenging than others. But the real difference, I think the real difference that we as native speakers, the difference we hear when we listen to someone who is effectively fluent in, let's say, our language, to someone who's a new learner of the language, is how well they've got command of the normal rhythm of speech that we hear. Because we can meet people from within our own countries who have very different accents to ours, but we still understand them really well because their rhythm of speech is basically the same. Although they may have a very different accent to us, their voice may sound very different. So my challenge is, when you're listening to material and you're trying to read along with it, copy it to get a sense of, okay, how do I say these words? That's fine. There is an element of trying to copy that, but don't get too hung up. Don't get too worried if I still sound like I've got this really strong accent. Let's say I've got a very strong Medellin accent, for example. Don't worry about that. That's not really the thing that's super important. The thing that's more important to try and copy first is not the accent of the native speaker you're listening to. It's the rhythm of their speech. Where do they put the stress on the words? How do they move the voice? Because that's the thing that's consistent within their native language, which will be different to your native language if you were saying the same sentence but translated, let's say, into Spanish, the modulation is different. That's the difference. So it's not about the accent, because whatever country you're from, where you're learning, let's say English is your second language, even in your own country, your native accent that you have undoubtedly is different from other people in different regions of your country. Same as my accent is peculiarly happens to be from the part of London I'm from, but most of that is thanks really just to my parents and the people I grew up among. If I came from a different part of England, I would have a different accent now. But the modulation of the speech would still be pretty much the same, because I'm speaking English and not Italian. That's the difference. So that's the challenge for today. Focus on the rhythm of the speech, the intonation. Don't worry too much about the accent. That itself can come as you progress, and maybe that depends a lot on where you end up living if you move to an English-speaking country, for example. So that's the challenge for today. Focus on more the rhythm and modulation. Don't worry too much about the accent, because that really is the very last thing. So I hope you find that one useful. Déjame saber en los comentarios, como siempre. And from now, from Medellin, say cheerio.